What's up, guys? It is Quinn here, back again with another fantasy football video, and today I'm going to be doing my first mock draft of the offseason. So I'm going to be using the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. I feel like it's, pretty solid, especially this early on in the offseason. I'll probably be putting out a mock draft every single week, so these are going to be coming out all throughout the offseason, so there'll be a ton to choose from. And if you guys want to see like specific formats, if you guys drop those down below in the comment section, I'll try to do those, as soon as I can. But let's just jump right into the settings. So for this first mock, we're going to be doing a pretty standard setup. So it's going to be PPR scoring, a 12-team league. Just did a random draft slot. So we're going to be picking from the number 5 spot. And then just a pretty standard roster setup. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and then a flex, and then 7 bench slots. So let's jump right into the draft. All right, so the first 4 picks of this draft was Jonathan Taylor at the 101, then Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and then Austin Eckler. I feel like that's pretty normal. All those running backs are going to go very early on. I wouldn't be surprised if Cooper Kupp was thrown in there in a few leagues, but that leaves us with some really solid options here left on the board. So I'm going to be looking at 2 players here. First one at the running back position is going to be Najee Harris. Really like Najee this year. Going to be the workhorse for the Steelers. Unlikely a better offense. I expect his efficiency to go up. And then at wide receiver, Cooper Kupp is very tempting here. This is a really tough call. I'm someone who normally really likes to go running backs early and often. But, let's take Cooper Kupp here. I feel like he's probably my 4th overall player behind my big 3 running backs of McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry. So let's kind of shake it up here. Go with Cooper Kupp and see how this plays out, because I do think we can get solid running back value in the 2nd and 3rd round. So let's see who went off the board at the end of the 1st and then the 2nd. So we see a pretty solid mix here of running backs and wide receivers, with Travis Kelce thrown in there early 2nd round. So in the 1st, it was Harris, Mixon, Diggs, Jefferson, Cook, Fournette, and Devontae Adams. Then in the 2nd, Jamar Chase, James Conner. It's pretty early for James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Travis Kelce, CeeDee Lamb, Aaron Jones, and Saquon Barkley. So let's see who is on the board here at the 208. At the running back position, we've got Alvin Kamara, Javonte Williams, Nick Chubb. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel. Also guys like Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans, A.J. Brown. So here I think I want to go running back because we did go wide receiver with our first pick. So looking at the guys here, Alvin Kamara would probably be my top guy here. It's just tough because we don't know about the suspension. Hopefully he doesn't get a big one, but I feel like, compared to Javonte Williams, compared to Nick Chubb, in my opinion, he is clearly the best option here. So that's where we're going to go with this pick, Alvin Kamara here in the mid-2nd round. So now we're heading into our 3rd round pick, and let's see who came off the board. Late 2nd, early 3rd. Really solid mix here. Some running backs, quarterback. Josh Allen goes late 2nd, way too early in my opinion. And then we saw the 2nd and 3rd tight end go off the board in the 3rd round. So Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews. So that leaves us here picking at the 305. So far we have Cooper Kupp and Alvin Kamara. So 1 running back, 1 wide receiver. Let's see if there's a solid value here either way. So looking at the running backs, it seems like teams went very running back heavy because we've got David Montgomery, Cam Akers, Ezekiel Elliott. Honestly, I'm not really loving the value on either of those guys. Tight end, could look Kittle, could look Waller. I'd like those guys more in the 4th round. Don't think they're going to be there at our pick, but I wouldn't want to pick them here mid-3rd. So it looks like we're going to be looking at the wide receiver position, and there are still some strong options here. Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Deontay Johnson. One guy is really sticking out to me here, and that is going to be Deebo Samuel. This dude was dominant last year. No matter how they use him, whether it's as a pure wide receiver or like that wide back, wide receiver running back combination, he is going to produce. It looks like he is going to stay with the 49ers. So I think he is an insane value here in the mid-3rd. I feel like he probably should be going mid-2nd round. So I really like the value there with that pick. And so far we've got 2 wide receivers, 1 running back. So a little bit concerned about that running back position, but hopefully some of these guys are available here in the 4th round. We see late 3rd, early 4th, a lot of wide receivers coming off the board. This is pretty typical. Teams are going to go running backs early and often. Then 3rd and 4th round are going to have a lot of wide receivers. So Keenan Allen, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, Jalen Waddle, all those guys going off the board in the third round. George Kittle also came off, and that means that one of the elite tight ends is still on the board. So we're going to have to take a look here at Darren Waller. The other 4 top tight ends are off the board. My opinion, still too early to go quarterback. Like I said, I thought that Josh Allen pick was a big reach. I'd much rather just wait, honestly, probably deep into the draft, because look at how deep these quarterbacks are. Russell Wilson is at the 10 slot, Matthew Stafford 11, Aaron Rodgers 12. I'd be fine with any of these guys. Trey Lance at 14. So why am I going to pick a dude like second, third, fourth round when I can wait and get another stud option? So let's check the running back slot. Ezekiel Elliott, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins. These are not horrible picks, but still I feel like we're kind of in this point where we're just going best player available. We have stud wide receivers, 1 stud running back. Looking at the wide receivers, I like Chris Godwin. I like Amari Cooper. Those would probably be my top guys at the wide receiver slot. But like I mentioned, Darren Waller is here. I'm a big fan of this Raiders offense. I think it's going to be a great passing attack. And I still think he can be a high-end tight end 1. Maybe not the overall tight end 1 with Devontae Adams in front of him, but I think this will take some of the pressure off him. He'll be more efficient, and I still think he can have a very solid season. So we're going to go with Darren Waller here in the middle of the 4th round. So kind of going way away from my normal strategy. At this point in most drafts, I'd like to have probably at least 2 running backs. Here we only have 1 with Alvin Kamara, but kind of just how the draft has played out, I feel like the value has been at other positions. So you definitely have to be, balanced and kind of adjust as you go on. So we saw a mix of running backs and wide receivers come off here. Zeke, McLaurin, Cooper, Travis Etienne go in the 4th. Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, Josh Jacobs, and Amon-Ra go in the 5th. So here at the 505, it would be nice if we had a solid value at running back, but once again, we're not going to be forcing it if it is not there. So we're looking at guys like J.K. Dobbins, Elijah Mitchell, A.J. Dillon. Wow, Chris Godwin is still on the board. That is interesting. I really do want to go running back here, but I also feel like Chris Godwin is just such a stud, even though he's coming off that ACL. Even if he, misses a few weeks, we already have Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel ahead of him. So this is going to be a really tough call between J.K. Dobbins and Chris Godwin. And I think I'm just going to go with my best player available, and that is going to be a Chris Godwin. Then we're kind of going to get into the rough position with these running backs. I'm definitely going to be hoping either Dobbins or Elijah Mitchell falls, but I definitely am not going to be banking on it. So we may just have to be piecing together the running back position at the end. But PPR, these wide receivers are going to put up some big numbers. So Chris Godwin is my wide receiver 3. I feel great about that. And let's take a look at the draft board to see if any of those running backs are still going to be available. So we actually saw kind of a run here on quarterbacks. 4 teams went quarterback. We saw Herbert, Mahomes, Hurts, and Burrow all come off the board. And we had some running backs go off, but we had Dobbins, Walker, Sanders, and A.J. Dillon. So I believe that Elijah Mitchell is still going to be here. And that is really clutch here, getting him in the 6th round, especially because we did need that running back position. We could look at a guy like Kyler here. I actually don't think he's bad value here in, the 6th round. I actually think he is a great value, but we just cannot pass up Elijah Mitchell. I really like him at this ADP, and he is going to be our 2nd running back here behind Alvin Kamara. So now we're going to be going into the 7th round. Right now we have our entire starting lineup filled out, minus the quarterback position. Probably going to stay that way, at least for a few more rounds, unless there's, a screaming value. So we saw every position come off. Man, those quarterbacks just keep going. So we saw Hawkinson, Marquise Brown, Tom Brady, Mike Williams. Then in the 7th, Kyler Murray, Hunter Renfrow, Rashad Bateman, and Deshaun Watson. See, at this point, when you're drafting the Tom Brady's, Deshaun Watson, who's likely going to be suspended, why are you taking those guys 7th round? Maybe Brady, I understand, but I just feel like in general, the difference between Tom Brady and a guy like Matthew Stafford or Dak Prescott is not going to be massive. But let's see how many teams have had quarterbacks so far. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 of the 12 teams have already selected their quarterback, which means that I can just wait because I just have to kind of get in before these teams start to get their QB2. So we're going to be waiting a few rounds before we go with the quarterbacks. And we can really go anywhere here. It would be nice if there was a running back value, but I'm definitely not going to force it. The running backs available, Damian Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chase Edmonds. So we're starting to get a little bit rough here in this territory. Wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, Devonta Smith, Adam Thielen. Honestly, I'm kind of looking at Clyde Edwards-Helaire here. It doesn't feel great, but looking at their running back competition, they brought in Ronald Jones, didn't really bring in anyone else. I do not think Ronald Jones is a good football player. Obviously he's good. He's in the NFL. But I mean, he is just a pure early down runner, cannot pass block, cannot catch. So Clyde is going to be getting probably the third down work and also some early down carries. I know this isn't a great situation for running backs, but I actually think he may be a solid pick this year. And the reason why I'd want to go with Clyde instead of a wide receiver, we already have 3 really, really solid wide receivers, and I just think the depth at wide receiver is fantastic, right? So even if Lockett, Smith, Thielen, Ayuk, all these guys come off the board, Gabriel Davis, there's still going to be really solid options like Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, Kadarius Toney, don't really love Toney, Drake London, Michael Gallup. Those guys are all going to be there in the next few rounds. So I am going to go with Clyde here, lock down our RB3, just because I think the RB position is really going to fall off here, and we're kind of going to be stuck in a tough spot if we don't go out and bring in CEH. So let's take a look at who was picked after us. Hopefully not a ton of these wide receivers, but we will see. All right, so going at the end of the 7th, a lot of wide receivers going off. Thielen, Kirk, Lockett, London, Smith, Gabriel Davis, Brandon Ayuk, Allen Lazard, Kadarius Toney. So a lot of those dudes came off. 2 teams took quarterback. So I believe we are the only team that has not selected a quarterback. Totally fine being in that position because we could go 9th round quarterback, maybe even 10th round quarterback. We just have to beat those teams from going and drafting their second guy. So I'm totally fine being in that position. So right now we have 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. We're not going with another tight end, even though I think Dalton Schultz here is actually a pretty solid value. We just do not need it. So looking at the running backs, we have Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, Melvin Gordon. Not horrible options, but I don't really love any of those guys. None of those players stick out as fantastic options. Looking at the wide receivers, Chase Claypool, Robert Woods, Michael Gallup, Jacoby Myers. Some interesting options here. Robert Woods is interesting. I just don't know about this Tennessee passing attack coming off of, I believe, an ACL tear. But then the guy I do like, Michael Gallup, is also coming off of an ACL tear. So I think we're going to go with Gallup here. I would just rather take the wide receiver 2 in the Cowboys offense than the wide receiver 2 in the Titans offense, assuming Treylon Burks is like the number 1 option there. But I just trust this wide receiver 2 position because it may not have a crazy ceiling. We saw last year Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb were both just solid fantasy options, but Gallup was a stud before they brought in CeeDee Lamb. He's going to have that wide receiver 2 role, so I really like him on my roster as a wide receiver 4. And now we're going to be heading into, the 9th round. So let's see who is going to be available. So it was an even split with 4 wide receivers and 4 running backs coming off the board. So we have, 4 or 5 more bench slots, and then we have our quarterback position. I still think we can wait on quarterback, but then we're going to have to go with one in the 10th round. So quarterback, Stafford, Rodgers, Lance, we're going to wait there. Running back, Kareem Hunt, Michael Carter, Rashad Penny. Not interested in Carter or Penny. Kareem Hunt is interesting. I'll come back to him. Wide receivers, Robert Woods, Jacoby Myers, Russell Gage. Robert Woods is still there. He's a solid option. Whoa, some major thunder behind me. But back at the running back position, we've got Kareem Hunt. He's interesting because if he stays with the Cleveland Browns, we know he's going to be a solid fantasy option. We're talking back end running back 2, high end running back 3. If Chubb goes down, he's going to, be probably an RB1, maybe back end RB1, but you still have kind of like that handcuff, but can also be a plug-in on a week-to-week basis. So he's interesting. The problem is that I do think he may be cut by the Browns. I think however his contract works out, they can cut him, don't have to eat a ton of money. So if he gets cut, then his situation is a little bit more up in the air. But I'm just going to take the risk here. If he's with the Browns, he's a great value here. If he gets cut, We don't know what team he's going to go to. Hopefully it would be a favorable spot, but let's just take the risk here and go with Kareem Hunt. And lucky for us, it does not look like a quarterback was picked in the 9th or 10th round. So that means we're going to go out, get our guy here. Don't want to, wait around because we don't want to miss out on one of these players. And this is actually going to be a tough call because we're kind of going between safety and more of a ceiling. So Matthew Stafford would be like my safety play. We know what we're getting out of him. The ceiling play would be Trey Lance because we know he has that rushing upside. I honestly would not be opposed to going back-to-back quarterback. I think that would be interesting. But then I think, we may be lacking at some other positions. So that is a tough one. This is actually a really interesting situation here. Matthew Stafford or Trey Lance. I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford just because we don't exactly know what's going on in this 49ers room. Plus, we just haven't seen it out of Trey Lance. But maybe if he falls a few rounds, isn't picked as someone else's QB2, I would definitely be interested in snagging him there. But I feel like Matthew Stafford kind of rounds out a very, very strong starting lineup here. Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Kamara and Mitchell at running back, Cooper and Debo at wide receiver, Waller at tight end, and Chris Godwin in the flex. That is a stacked unit. So I'm really liking how this team is looking so far. Looking at who was picked, in between our selections, we had Ramondre Stevenson, Alexander Madison, Jameson Williams, and Naheem Hines come off. Then Russell Gage, Pat Freiermuth, Rondell Moore, and Tim Patrick. So here we are with our 11th round pick. And honestly, I'm looking at the draft board, and Sky Moore came off in the 9th. I did not think he was still available. Probably would have picked him over Michael Gallup, but who knows? He must have been buried way down there. So that's something to keep an eye on if he is going that low. I think in, sharper leagues, he's going to be off the board way before that. I know in Underdog, he is definitely going earlier than that 9th round. Looking at the running backs here, just don't really love what we're looking at. James Robinson, Darrell Henderson, Kenneth Gainwell, Sony Michel. We already have 4 running backs, so I don't really feel a huge need to go out there. If I was going to get one, I'd be looking at Isaiah Spiller. Dameon Pierce has a shot to lead the Houston backfield. So those are just players to keep an eye on. At the wide receiver slot, we're looking at Chris Olave, Kenny Galladay, MVS, Corey Davis. Honestly, a few players down. I'm not super high on this guy compared to, I feel like, most people. But Christian Watson sitting here, I don't know if he's going to be ready to play in year 1. But if he is, the opportunity is totally going to be there. Not a lot of target competition. So I'm fine taking a swing on Christian Watson here as my wide receiver 5. I feel like there are worse players to go after in this slot. So let's see who was picked. I may be considering Trey Lance here, just getting a second quarterback. With a bench that's this big, what is it, 7 guys on the bench, I don't think that would be a bad option. We saw a lot of running backs come off the board. Unfortunately, both the guys that I was looking at, Dameon Pierce and Isaiah Spiller, are both off, so that is not ideal. But we may be looking at Trey Lance here. I think he is still on the board. Just saw Kirk Cousins come off. So at wide receiver, we just have a bunch of these depth options. Running back, the guy I liked came off. Rachaad White is still there. Tyler Algier, I think, are great values. But those guys may be going a little bit later. So I'm just going to snag Trey Lance. I feel like this is going to be the time teams go in for their quarterback 2. And his ceiling is so high, I'm fine kind of, sitting him on the bench for a little bit, taking up a roster spot. Because I have Trey Lance instead of some dude who's probably never going to crack my lineup. And we did see one team go out and get their second quarterback. Saw a few running backs come off, a few tight end 2s, and then a wide receiver. Personally, I'm not going to be getting a second tight end unless it's some insane value. Just feel like no one is ever going to, slot in place of Darren Waller. Obviously, unless he goes down. So if he gets injured, kind of unfortunate. But I just feel like rostering someone who you're really never going to play is not exactly the best option. So looking at wide receivers, MVS, Corey Davis, Sterling Shepard, don't really love any of those guys. So I think we're going to go running back. And this is a tough call between Rachaad White and Tyler Algier. I'm going to take the upside option and go with Algier because I think he has the best option to have kind of day 1 usage. But Rachaad White is definitely the upside handcuff. But Algier is going to be the pick here. All right, so a ton of different guys from a bunch of different positions come off here at the end of the 13th and start of the 14th round. And this is going to be our last pick. So right now, On our roster, we have 2 quarterbacks. We have, 5 running backs, and I believe 5 wide receivers. Yep, that looks right. So really we could go in a variety of different spots here. I'd probably be looking at the wide receiver position just because I feel like this late in drafts, your dart throws are kind of better served at the wide receiver position. Just make sure we're not missing anyone down here. And at this point, we're kind of just shooting at whatever player, you think has the solid upside, whatever player you are interested in. MVS this late is not bad because he will have the opportunity, in a pretty lackluster Chiefs wide receiver core. But I just feel like he's had so many years playing with Aaron Rodgers. He should have done something. Corey Davis, not super interested in him. Jahan Dotson, the rookie. Got George Pickens, David Bell. You know what? I'm going to go with David Bell here. My guy dominated all 3 years of college. Just think he's a stud player. If Deshaun Watson is there for a decent amount of time, he could step into the wide receiver 2 role. So I'm a big fan of David Bell, and he's going to be kind of my late round flyer here. The better value is probably MVS, but I'm just going to go with my guy. And this is going to be our final roster. Don't pay attention to the grade. They just kind of grade you on how well you follow their ADP. So, if you just took the best player available on their rankings every time, you would get the best grade, but that is not what we are trying to do here. So going through the roster, quarterback Matthew Stafford, running back Alvin Kamara, running back Elijah Mitchell, wide receiver Cooper Kupp, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, tight end Darren Waller, flex Chris Godwin, our bench CEH, Michael Gallup, Kareem Hunt, Christian Watson, Trey Lance, Tyler Algier, and David Bell. I feel like this is a very, very solid team. First mock I've done with the Draft Wizard this offseason. Feel like this ended up going pretty well. So like I mentioned at the top, going to be doing one of these probably every week. So stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.